one of the challenges that we have at Wix is that we're building a new product that's called Editor X, and we want to build a community for that product as well. So I'll walk you through what's going on behind the scenes. What are the things that we're working on, and then feel free to, as I said, if you have any questions, if anything is unclear to you, just stop me at any time. Okay, so you can talk to me, and I'll be happy to pause in the middle of the presentation. There's no need for this to be like a one-sided, kind of communication. So I guess Alessio was great enough to introduce me. So I'll skip this part and talk about the contents. And then maybe wondering like, okay, let's talk about the boring stuff. And I'll start from that, which is let's not get buried in the strategy docs. That's the first thing. If you want to build something, you will need to really, really get started with getting your hands dirty. And I'll walk you through a little bit of that. Okay. So how are we building the Editor X? When we build a product, we want to make sure that we stay informed on what's going on. We are being transparent so that people know what's going on, and we want to get involved. And getting involved means we want to really get into the nuts and bolts of what's going on with the community, with the users, how are they using the product, and so on. And this usually means, joining a community, joining places where they are, fixing issues, and being transparent means fixing problems and trying to come up with workarounds, and really try and understand what problems are they trying to solve and how are they using the product. And then first thing is like, okay, so joining a community and listening. There are 2 points to that. You could join, especially if you have like a small business and you're like not ready to build your own solution. You could definitely talk about other places that they are in. So there might be places that, for example, in Editor X, our user base is mostly web designers. So where are the web designers? They are on Behance, on Dribbble, on Stack Overflow. They are on Reddit. They're everywhere. You could go to other places as well. And we do a little bit of that. But we also launched a forum. We have a benefit at Wix, which is like we have the solutions already. So we have a Wix forum solution. So we have that in place. And then we wanted to get our hands dirty. We wanted to really see what's going on there. And you will see the screenshots are probably small on the screen for you. But then if you receive, I'll send you the PDF of this presentation so you can look at this and zoom in. But it's essentially like someone has a problem or someone has a feedback. What we're doing is really like our product team, myself, people in the team, in marketing team, everywhere, we're trying to really understand what's going on there. Like, what are you trying to achieve? How did you use this feature? How did you get this? I'd love to get you to get, give me more information. And it becomes highly qualitative at this point because we want to make sure that we really understand what's going on, validating whether this is an issue or this is just a feedback or just perception. And then obviously, if it needs to be fixed, we'll go ahead and fix. So getting hands dirty means everyone in the team, there's nothing really that's, oh, this is not for me, or everyone in the team gets really involved to understand what's going on. And this is really, really important because as you start to do that, you learn like, okay, how are they using our product? How are they building things? How are they, trying to come up with solutions using what we brought up to them? And then we go beyond our forums because obviously the forum, when we launch something, is quite small, right? So as I mentioned, maybe someone doesn't have a community platform yet. You don't have a forum yet. So go elsewhere. Go to your social media, go to groups, go to Quora, go to Reddit, go to whatever it is that you have people from your company using. So if you don't know where they are, a few tips. You can maybe search for hashtags that are similar to the user base that you are aimed for. So in this case, web designers. You could go to Twitter. You could go to Facebook. It's very high, like it's super high likely that they will be talking about something that resonates to your product there. And if they're not talking about your product just yet, and then you can start to foment that discussion. But if you launch something and you have a product that's, that's out there in the market, you will find people talking about it. Even if it's a small group of people, we will find them. And that goes back to my first thing that I want to share with you guys here, which is there's no task beneath you. And I think for a lot of community managers that I see with the title of like senior community managers, director of community, head of community, they feel that they're entitled and they don't need to, clean up spam. They don't need to reply to a question on the forum, or they don't feel that they need to go and search online for what's going on. And to me, this is really bad because it brings like a bad image for a bad reputation for certain community managers. Uh, there's really like no task beneath you. If you own a restaurant, it doesn't matter like that you're like the owner, you're like the chef. If you see someone needs like attention in your in a table, you go and serve that table. If you need someone to clean up another table so you can serve more guests, you will do that. It doesn't matter if you are the owner, if you are a chef, as I said, if you're a manager, there's no task beneath you. And for a community manager, is no different. If you're a community manager, you want to be where the users are. You want to ask, you want to talk to them. You talk individually, and you're like, oh, but this is not scalable. Who said you need to scale when you start something? You start something to really learn, get highly qualitative. Once you learn the how it works, then you start to think about, okay, how do I move from this to 10x this? And that's a different task. But at the beginning, really don't get bold that don't hear to people saying like, oh, we need to hire moderators, or this is a task for, I don't know, customer support. It's not, it's for you. Okay. So the more you do that, you start to build that circle, right? So you're listening, you're educating them, but feeling educated by them. You're enabling them as well. You're inspiring them. So it's a few things here, right? So if you think about Editor X in this example, we inspire them by showing what can be done with Editor X. We enable them by giving them the tool. We teach them how to use the tool, and we listen to them, to how they perform in using that tool. And the more we listen to them, we'll find different things and different ideas and insights that could inspire more people, and we can enable that, and so on and so forth. So that's essentially like the engine. Like, so you build it's not a flywheel, but you essentially build this engine so that community can start to form in that aspect. Okay. Now you're building that, you're working on that, and then you think, okay, so we need to start to look at what's the big vision here, what's the big plan. And again, we want to meet social core needs, right? So main need of someone in a community is like that feeling that they belong to that space, that it's not just a place they will go in and leave. There are situations, and especially at the beginning, where it's going to be transactional. People will go in, they will ask a question and leave. And that's fine because they're learning about the product. And I'll get to that in a second. But as they learn, as they understand the value, they'll come back. And then you have user motivators, which are things that you don't necessarily measure by numbers, but you measure by emotional payoffs. So that feeling that you get, give you an example. When you go to an airport and then you get into the economy class, which is probably what all of us do, and you get that massive queue, maybe you're like in a Ryanair flight and you're like, oh God. And then you see people come into like this VIP lounge, skipping the queue, fast tracking, no, like go straight forward, like there's no kind of concern. They get in before everyone else. They can carry as many luggages as they want. And it's like, wow, that person has that feeling of a VIP. And you feel that even if you're not in that position, because you're like, oh, I wish I was there. I wish I was in that position. And giving them that feeling in a community is essential, because you're like, yes, I know that here I have access. I have this feeling that I'm directly contributing to the product or directly contributing to the group or to the greater good. Second, recognition, which is, again, the more you feel proud about what you're doing, the better. I'll give you another example of that. If you're walking on the street, let's say you're like in Rome or Milano, like, okay, there's someone in Milano, or like Roma, whatever, you pick the city. And then imagine like you're walking in the city, or like you're drinking your coffee there, or beautiful black coffee, super strong. And then you see like a tourist walking in with a map, feeling a little bit lost. And then that person comes to you and say like, do you know where is this pizzeria here? What is it? And then you're like, yes, I know, it's around the corner. You just go straight and then turn right. And then that person, oh my God, thank you so much. And then they just leave. And how do you feel after that? Do you feel you were abused by that person? You feel that person abused it because they're like, oh my God, they're trying to get information from me here. What's going on? Or do you feel helpful? Do you feel proud that you were able to share information that you knew of? Probably the latter, right? You probably feel great about this. You even like smile, like, yeah. Some people even try and walk you. They're like, I can walk you there. And then they go beyond the extra mile. So that feeling is the feeling you want to bring to your community. And then togetherness, which is, again, togetherness is what we want to bring everywhere we go, right? So why do you go to a party? Why do you go to a conference? Why do you go to your local shop, your local bar, your local pub? Because you want to find people that fit to you, like people that you feel like, okay, I can talk to this person, I have a great conversation, or I want to have friends coming together because this is a great feel. Like this place has a really cool vibe. There are other people that I really like to chat with. So you want to bring that togetherness into it as well. So these are like emotional payoffs. These are not things you measure. It's really hard to measure, and it's okay to not measure all of things that you're doing, because these are things that you will see from the emotional payoff that you get. Okay. Then back to a product, kind of like where we are at, when we're building products and we're starting something. This is, you probably know this from the quadrant that's called the conscious competence quadrant. And this is just another way of bringing this information in that makes more sense for a product. So when you launch something new, like say Wix is launching a new feature, or it's launching a new product, it's called Editor X, and you're like, oh, okay, that looks interesting, looks fun, but you're clearly incompetent about what's going on there. And as you start to use it, or start to, say we're here on Hopin, which is a platform for events, and you like get started, you like looks exciting, but then you're like, oh, hold on, what's going on? Where do I click? Where should I go? How do I do this? How do I do that? And then you start like, okay, this is not as simple as it looks. And it's the same thing when you're starting to form competent, like the conscious about your incompetence, like you're knowing what you don't know. And then as you start to figure things out, things start to get better. Again, like driving, right? When you're learning how to drive, you need to think about every single thing. Look at the mirror, step on the clutch, change gears, look at the people walking by. And then the more you master that, the clearly it gets, like, because then you can like listen to the radio, you can talk to someone on the passenger seat, and you can still conduct and do all of things at once. You don't even think about it. So that's essentially where you want to get when you're building a product. It should be something that, just like maybe Facebook or Instagram is it for you now, where you don't think twice about like, this is the button I have to press. Where do I have to press to share a message? You just know, like if you click there, the keyboard's going to open and you can type and then you can send a message. You know it. It's like a known competence. And that's where we want to get when you build a product, and we're evolving in the product competence line. Okay, cool. All with me. Now let's move to the point of listening, right? So when we ask questions, we listen to maybe things we want to hear and things we don't want to hear. So we asked about, pain points from designers, and we did some basic research and like, what are the pain points from web designers? And then we see a little bit of what they're talking about. But then the joy of community is you can go a level deeper. And then when you ask what else, you go a level deeper. There's actually a really good TED talk about the question, what else? That question is insanely good because it makes you get so much more out of people. And I'll tell you, you can experience that anywhere. If you go to your team, maybe like someone that you're managing, or you can go to, I don't know, your kids or whoever you want to talk to, ask them about like, how was your day, for example? And then you talk about how was their day. And then after they finish talking with the very superficial things that maybe the first things they remembered, you ask them, what else? That will get them thinking. And as it gets them thinking, you get to that point where they're like talk about things that really matter to them and things that they were really concerned, or like, oh, I actually struggled with this, or I had this issue, or this happened. And that's when you get real information, the real meaty insights. So we do that a lot, and we do that frequently. Not only we do that online by search, but we actually have weekly calls with customers where our product team and members of my team as well get involved, and we actually listen to what they're saying. And they're like, how else do you use Editor X? What else are you doing? What else are you building? What else are you working on? And we really try and get to the levels of detail that are like, okay, this is the main core need for this person, or this is what they're trying to achieve. And doing that keeps a pulse check, which is essentially like, what's going on, how to keep track of things, and if you are going in the right direction. So this is really, really important, really good insight. Okay, so what else? This is the second point for you guys. Okay, now building a feedback loop process. Usually when you launch a product, there is like a very basic way in how you release that product so you can test. First is internally to your team members, and that's when you have a validation from that. Some companies call it eating your own dog food. So it's essentially trying your own products and testing it out and seeing what works and what doesn't, which is somehow QA if it's technical. If not, it's an UAT, which is acceptance test. So it's like user level testing. It's not on a technical level. And you can do that internally, or you can start to use that with beta users. If a company has enough members, enough clients, whatever, you can build into a beta process. And then once that's done, you do a rollout. So you essentially roll this feature or this product into the market. If it's a big product, so when I worked for Dropbox, which is like 600 million users, or for Zynga, or for Wix as well, which is like hundreds of millions of users, it's too hard. It's too, not even hard, but it's too dangerous to just release something to everyone at once, because if one thing goes wrong, you're going wrong for like hundreds of millions of people. So it's highly unlikely this is going to ever happen. So what we do is, after we do the internal testing and some beta testing, when we do rollouts, we still do gradual rollouts. So that's why you'll probably hear, like, if you're getting involved in this big companies, you're like, we're going for a 5% rollout, 20% rollout, 30% rollout, and so on and so forth over the period of certain weeks, so that you can start to see what's the progress, what's really happening after you do that. So as you do that, you start to see, if product is really working. When we work with communities, we add a 10x here to the UAT, because you use your community members as beta testers, and they can give you not only quantitative numbers, because it's a 10x, it's a much bigger audience, but they can give you the qualitative, because they can discuss around a release. And that's the joy of it. And that's the joy of really building something and putting it out there for the community to test, because they can give you really, really meaningful insights. And we start to do that initially in a spreadsheet. Now we have like a proper space for them to share their insights and things that they like. They can vote, and they can give you like proper thoughts on it, and people can jump into other people's feedback and add elements to it, add observations to it, which is really, really good. And that gives me another insight to share with you guys, which is sometimes you have platforms out there that have ideation, coming as an out of the box functionality, but do not just release it if you don't have a buy-in from your product team, because what's going to happen is you're going to cause a lot of frustration. A lot of people buy a platform solution because it has ideation, you can vote and whatever, but then you release it to the market, people start to share ideas and vote for that, and then what happens? Product team doesn't even care. They barely look at it, and then you're like, uh-oh, because what community will do is like, okay, do you have updates on this? Do you have updates on that? And then there's zero updates on that. And then that becomes the frustration and the snowball effect of frustration. So be careful, like, just because platforms there are offering like insane amounts of solutions, that's not how you actually get things to work. Go for the basics if you need to, but get your product teams buy-in first. Okay. Now, next point here, which is the hard truth for community managers. Feedback is just part of the whole thing if you're building product. Feedback is really important, but you need to make sure that you have speed and focus as well, because you don't want to make a product that's just based on feedback, but it doesn't have focus, or it doesn't deliver with the right timing, because timing sometimes can be the key changer to make a product really stick or not. But focus is what will make you build a product that solves a specific problem and not necessarily just building a Frankenstein. So you need to be really aware of this. Product team members know that, but if you don't, you'll be stuck into situations where you're like, why is my feedback not taken into consideration? Because you need to zoom out and look at what else is important for the product development, what else is important for us to be successful. So that's where a community manager has to balance business acumen with community acumen. You need to know why certain products are being delivered in certain ways, why sometimes feedback of certain things will be ignored because they're not part of the focus, because they will delay things. So you have to be really smart in how you balance that. It's an EQ work that you have to do with the product team. So highly important for you to know. Okay. How am I doing with time? I'm okay. Are you guys with me? Do I have like maybe 5 more minutes before we go into questions? Awesome. Okay. Sounds good, guys. Sounds good. Grazie. Okay. The other thing, and this is something that I came up with, and I hope it makes sense for you guys. But sometimes, like when you ask the what questions, we get, some answers, some insights, but then the hows are slightly different. So this is something that I really liked when I was like kind of, formulating this in the presentation in my mind. When again, Ford asked, okay, what would customers want? If I asked them what they wanted, they would tell me faster horses. Well, let me tell you what, they actually built faster horses, but the how is different. So it's a combustion engine that was built. But if you still look at the car, like this is measured by horsepower. Why? Because people resonate. There's an analogy to that. And it makes sense. They wanted faster horses. There's still a faster horse here. Like it's a 660 horsepower. So it's a 600 plus on the horse that you would have in a carriage like the one above. So you ask them what, they give you the what, but the how is up to you. Another example, Steve Jobs. Oh, if I asked people what they wanted when Trail was up there, they'd be looking for phones with more buttons. Let me tell you what, they did launch a phone with more buttons. Although it looks like it's a buttonless or like one button only, it has a ton of buttons. Like, look at that. Look at how many things you can click on. This is insane. Actually, so creating like the house is when you get to the inside of like, they actually built a solution that covers what the users wanted, just like the car. It's just the way it's presented, the way it's created, its design is different, but it's the same what. It's the same what. My conclusion of this is customers will give you feedback of the what, but it's up to you to figure out the how. So I hope you agree. If you disagree, feel free to share in the comments. But that was the insight that I got when I was doing this research. And the more and more I was working with product teams. Now, few things for you to help you if you're actually conducting feedback and really if you want to get more information from users, is to be really, really good at asking questions. Be very specific when you have to. Don't ask about features, but rather goals from the customers. Because sometimes this is like something that product team will come up with. They say, can you ask them to share feedback on the recording button that's on the top? You're like, this is not what they want, but rather talk about the business goal behind it. So can you talk to me more about being able to revisit or to watch again this feature? What does it feel for you? And that's really important. Again, don't induce people to answers as well. For example, oh, did you try going to our knowledge base and searching on for this and this and that? You're literally conducting them and inducing them to an answer. They'll be, it's creating bias if you're doing that. And another really important thing is to be aware of the silent majority versus vocal minority. A lot of the times what's going to happen is you will have a community with, let's say, 100 members, but only 5 or 10 of them are the ones that are always giving feedback and always complaining and always talking about the same thing. But it's always the same 10. And they're the vocal minority. They're not necessarily people who will give you what really is happening behind the scenes. So you have to pay attention to the silent majority, which are people that are perhaps using your product, but they're not heavily engaged in sharing feedback. And to get to that point is really hard. You have to really look at other KPIs beyond your product or community KPIs and match them. You need to like deliver focus groups and really try and bring in other elements in how we measure this. This is not the topic for this specific talk. Maybe we can talk about this in the future. You can ask me on LinkedIn or whatever. But this is really important, okay? Especially in a company that has like hundreds of millions of users, like the ones that I've been working on. But if you have a business that has 100 members, it's still, you may get only 10 that are trying to represent the majority, and you have to be careful with that, okay? And then the third point on the feedback is to try and drill down the types of feedback. And again, this is probably going to be, it's no news for a lot of you, but again, if you have feedback, try and understand what type of feedback is it. Is it an actual bug? Does it need escalation? Did it break? Is it just a request? Is it just a question? Is it maybe educational? Is it a feature that already exists, but it's not necessarily something that's serving their needs? So try and understand that, because the 3 points will give you what then people look at OKRs, or the famous OKRs, objectives and key results. So you really try and change that challenge and make that become an objective for you. So this is an example, okay, of the feedback loop that we just spoke about. So your objective is to build a feedback loop with the product team. How are you going to measure this? What are your key results? And then you can put your key results. That becomes a business side of the thing. So that's when you convert that emotional payoff, all of this journey that we went through, into a business objective. Okay. So just to finalize here, key takeaways for you guys. So getting your hands dirty. There's no task beneath you. Doesn't matter your title. Really forget titles. Don't release out-of-the-box features just before you get a buy-in from the product team or for the teams you're working with, because that's going to cause frustration. Be aware of the vocal minority. Feedback is just the what. You got to figure out the how. And then what else? You tell me. So guys, I want to pause here and thank you for your time. And if you have questions, feel free to ask in the Q&A box. I would love to hear from you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It was a great. So can you mention again the quote about the what and the how, because it was amazing.
Yeah, so your customers will tell you the what, which was what they want, but it's up to you to figure out the how.
No, okay, that's the thing. I want this on a poster in my room because it's amazing. So, ragazzi, create voi le domande qua sulla destra nel Q&A and answer box, così posso farle a Edu. Grazie. Um, the first question is just a minute. I'll- so. Gerardo asks, can you tell us your process to study the ZTBD of the users? Do you have
Mhm.
specific frameworks for that?
Great question, Geraldo. So when we look at jobs to be done, for those who don't know, it's a use terminology. People use it like jobs to be done. Some people say user stories. They're very similar in essentially what is the need from that user so that they can have whatever impact, and how do we measure, how do we go about that. There are two ways we do that. We do have a basic framework, which is just the question that we ask: what are they trying to achieve? So what are they trying to do so that they can achieve X result? And then we look at, can we offer something around that? Do we have solutions or a mix of solutions that will solve that need? um, but then we try and also look at, when you go back to that point of what I said, like focus, velocity, and feedback, we look at the other 2 points, which is this part of the need, that this, or the core solution of this product, of this feature, of this uh, essential product that we have. So give you an example. Sometimes people want to build, given maybe a dashboard on Editor X, and Editor X is a website builder. You don't build dashboards. So as much as there's a job to be done there, there's a need for them in getting like dashboards to measure X, Y, and Z. There's a lot more there that's beyond our scope, and because of the focus, we don't do that. We clearly mentioned that, okay, this is not going to happen, so we have to go back. So we have, right now, the way we do is, because it's a new product, we're trying to match, okay, what are things that will resonate to our vision and our core goals, and what are things that we will need to perhaps direct them to other spaces, or could potentially become something else that we don't have yet. So this is usually how we break it down. Okay.
I have a question for you. How do you tag the discussion? Because you mentioned that as a community manager, you should be the translator, the bridge from between the community and your product team. So how do you tag the discussion, like product, like so feedback? This is a bug. This is a new feature. If you don't have the knowledge to tag them, because you are not sure that is a bug or is a new feature or is just a feedback or something like that.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Alessio. And I think this is the main issue with technical product from the non-technical community manager. It happens in all levels. So first thing you should do is have a really clear escalation process with your customer care, product specialists, or even product team if you need to, and that will give you the initial insights. So give you an example, a practical example of what we do. When I joined, I had no idea if something would be a bug or just feature request, because I didn't even know if we had that feature. So how would I know if it's a feature request or an existing feature? So I would first have an escalation path, which is a Slack channel that I created specifically for the product team and the product specialist. So the customer support team, let's say. And then in that workflow, so you can build workflows on Slack. So it's essentially basic workflow where you send them a question saying, okay, the question is this and this and that. This is what the user is trying to achieve. And this is my proposed answer. Because if you try and propose an answer, you will start to learn what should or should not be said. So you're like, okay, my assumption here is that this is a feature request because we don't have such thing. And that's when you start to see feedback. And the feedback may be, okay, this, we actually have this, and this is where you can find it. And then you're like, okay, I learned this lesson. I learned this. So next time I'll know. And you start to build knowledge yourself because it's going to be new for you as well, just like as the users. And then you can start to build up an FAQ on that as well. So you almost like build a list that say, these are like known issues, or these are like frequently asked questions about this and that, and you can publicize that to the community as well. And they like, if you have a question about this, this is actually not a bug, this is working as intended, and so on and so forth. So that's how you build the knowledge and start to divert that kind of traffic.
How do you help the product team to not focus on the what, but focus on the how? Because maybe the product team that read the discussion and read the feedback, maybe they can say, "Oh, this is what people want," but they don't want to do this. How do you,
Yeah.
can manage that?
Really good question. I think there are certain product managers that don't want to hear the what's, and they completely ignore. Like they don't know what they want, and they don't even ask the what. For those who do, it's I think it's really important for us to translate that what into this is what okay. Make the vocal minority example.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
what this small group of people are talking about. But then when we look at the volume of search or volume of the most accessed threads, the discussions that have most views, you'll see maybe this other element here. And this is other what's that are happening here. And maybe this other what's here, much more, let's say, about collaboration of team members. Is there a way we can, are we building features that will allow us to collaborate maybe real time? They're like, okay, we do have this in the roadmap, or we actually release this. So then it's when we start to like bring the how to them in different ways, where if they choose to ignore the what, which is what happened like to me in the past, it doesn't happen at Wix, which is really good. People here care too much about the product to really listen to the customers, where other companies, people may be a little bit cocky and they be like, I don't care about the what, I know what to do. And that Apple Steve Jobs feeling, maybe the Steve Jobs school formed people like that to like ignore what people are saying. And you need to bring them the dollar sign, and this is a different way of bringing feedback, but this is really important. Give you an example. If certain things that they're telling, like they're telling you what, and this what here is causing you to have drop in members, so people are like, the retention is going down, we're getting a lot of attrition, or this is causing a lot of customer support tickets, and each ticket costs you X dollars. So we're actually, because you don't listen to customers, this is costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars per month. This is when it gets to their attention. They're like, oh, hold on, we need to work on this. So it will change based on the kind of like the type of product team you have. But majority of them will be listening to the customers. But then you need to really help them, funnel that through what makes sense.
So you should be aware that there's something that is happens here. So
Yeah,
you should take a look and say, okay, the what is not clear, but you should we should find out,
let's
okay,
yeah.
that the way.
And conducting your calls and things like that will help for sure, because then it's when you actually get to the grids of, okay, what else are they trying to achieve here? What are they
Yeah,
asking for?
yeah. That's a good. So time is running out, so we should close this session. I'm so happy to have you here, and thanks for a lot of topics that you covered on during your session, and it was a great session for people that manage product community. Thank you, Edu, for
No
everything,
problem.
and bye bye.
Thank you. Grazie. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.